Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me. How are you? Have a good day, everyone, and God bless you. Alright, now we will come to today's news. And it looks like CNN and other mainstream media outlets out there absolutely panicked at the aesthetic that Biden chose to deliver this divisive speech that he gave last night, where he targeted MAGA Americans and, of course, anybody that voted for Trump as domestic terrorists as a danger to their so-called democracy. Democracy is actually a danger to our constitutional republic. That's why they continue to reel against it. That's why they continue to try to destroy our voting norms, destroy the Electoral College, continue to destroy any rebels a semblance of what we had with the founders had framed it, and these people continued their march to destruction. While CNN noticed the aesthetics, they noticed how evil Biden looked on the camera with the dark blood red color in the background, with the Marine standing in the back, and his angry rhetoric as he was spewing out his mouth as he was telling his supporters, that is open season on Republicans and the government, federal government has your back. That is the message that was sent out, seeing an absolutely panic in this and had to tone down to color. At least he started coloring of the show or of the speech, last night, and they toned it down to more of a pinkish color, not the dark blood red color. That was actually what it really looked like. So let's go take a look what we have here coming to us. It says CNN changes to color in the background lighting of Biden's Moloch speech to make it look less evil. That's right. They had to. They absolutely had to. And you see this as a lighting coloring make it look a little bit more pinkish in the background. That's not what it looks like. Actually, Biden's Thursday evening delivered the most divisive and evil speech in U.S. history. The imagery was shocking. The red glow, the shadowy Marine standing behind Biden as he threatened millions of Trump supporters. MAGA Republicans do not respect the Constitution. They do not believe in the rule of law. They promote authoritarian leaders. And they fanned the flames of political violence, said Biden. Pedo Hitler trended on Twitter after Biden's sickening speech. Right? We're not going to. The MAGA Republicans do not respect the Constitution. Yeah, we're in red. That so CNN, however, elite suddenly changed the background lighting the Biden satanic speech to a bright pink to make it look less evil. So here's the let's go ahead. Yeah, they understood what's going on. Us as a Jake Schneider says lol halfway through by Brandon Sweet scene, and tried to suddenly alter the color of the background lighting, presumably to make it look less evil and creepy. And that's what they did. They were using their manipulation on the airwaves to make it look a little less evil. But the message remains itself. This is what the Democrat Party. This is what state media, this is what the left-hand side absolutely is looking to do to Republicans, and anybody that is not in lockstep with their ideology. And there's a lot of leftists out there that have been left behind with the Communist Party, who were useful idiots to get them to where they are currently. And now they are considered also MAGA Republicans now by the communist left. They will use their useful ideas to get what they want, when they get fully control, and then they will make them enemies of the state as well. This is a dangerous path that we're currently on with this puppet of a leader in the White House that is being strings or being pulled from behind. Many people have claimed it's Barack Obama, and I believe that might be true as well. And then, what an absolute disaster the special election in the state of Alaska was. Republicans just lost the seat in the Alaska special election to possibly the dumbest election system I have ever witnessed in my life. It's called ranked choice voting, and on paper, at least the way that it was marketed to people, when the people of Alaska voted for this system, it probably seemed democratic and logical. But in practice, I think people got a serious wake-up call as to why ranked choice voting is a complete disaster. Folks, in the Alaska special election, Republican candidates essentially got over 60% of the vote. The Democrat candidate, the sole single Democratic candidate on the ballot, got 38%, and the Democrat won. Over 60% of people voted for a candidate with an AR next to their name, and the Democrat ended up taking the seat. Alaskans voted for ranked choice voting back in 2020. And frankly, I don't think people knew what they were voting for. Because this is the most garbage system I have ever witnessed. We've got some stuff to talk about, folks, as to why RCV is terrible, or ranked choice voting, and how it creates an opening for all kinds of ridiculous shenanigans. Possibly one of the most undemocratic election systems there is. For those of you guys are unaware of what's going on, let me fill you guys in, so let's roll the tape. Alright, friends. So take a look at this Democrat Mary Peltola. Wins Alaska special election. Democrat Mary Peltola has been declared the winner over former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin in an Alaska special general election. Peltola will serve the remainder of a former GOP representative Don Young's term in Congress. According to unofficial ranked choice voting results announced, the seat to represent Alaska's at-large congressional district became vacant after Young, who held the seat for 49 years, passed away earlier this year. The special election was only to determine who fills the rest of Young's term, which ends on January 3. Peltola, Palin, Nikki Bachik and Chris Bai will face off in another ranked choice. The special general election for the vacant seat in Alaska, which was held on August 17, used ranked choice voting, a measure approved by Alaska residents in 2020. That dismissed the state's previous election method consisting of partisan elections ahead of general elections. Due to the measure's approval, all candidates in the special election appeared on the same ballot. Fox News reporting ranked choice voting allows voters to rank candidates in order of preference on their ballots. Should one candidate receive a majority of first preference votes, that individual is declared the winner of the race. However, if no candidate wins a majority of first preference votes, the candidate with the fewest first preference votes is eliminated. Following the elimination of the candidate who received the least amount first preference votes, voters' second preference choices are evaluated and a new tally is established to determine whether a candidate in the race has received a majority of the vote. That process is repeated until a candidate wins a majority of the vote, the report added. And so if it sounds overly complicated, and frankly, stupid, well, that's exactly what it is. Most people are visual learners. So let me show you guys exactly what happened here. This is essentially how the system works. We have 98.7% of the vote has been reported. So essentially, these are the final results. As you guys can see, this is the ballot. There's a total of 175,000 votes roughly and 3 candidates on the ballot. There's 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat. The Republican vote was split between the 2 candidates at 31.4% for Sarah Palin and 28.2% for Nick Belgic, or Begging, however you pronounce it, and the lonely Democrat Mary Peltola received 38.9% of the vote, meaning in the end, in the final vote tally, Republicans won 60%, I believe even over 60% of the vote. The Democrat didn't even scratch 40%, and the Democrat ended up winning. How in any way is this democratic? Let's say Nick Begay decided that he wasn't going to run, and he wasn't going to challenge Sarah Palin. And the vote was between Sarah Palin and Mary Peltola. Sarah Palin would have easily secured over 50% of the vote and won democratically, as Alaska is a 60% plus Republican voting state. But instead, the Republican vote was split in between 2 candidates. And therefore, baseline by virtue, the result of this terrible voting procedure and system, the Democrat won by default. We're talking about some truly stupid stuff. Whoever invented this system probably thought that they were a genius, probably one of those moderates. We keep hearing about those. I'm in the middle on every single issue and partisanship bad, which of course, in a utopian ideal society and world, that makes sense. But it certainly doesn't make sense in a world where there's Republican and Democrat parties and you have a system that doesn't reflect that, and you have a system that runs an uneven amount of candidates on any given side, and creates a total tactical advantage for the Democrats as opposed to the Republicans. All the Democrats had to do here is say, let's coalesce behind one specific candidate alone, and the Republicans will automatically lose. For Pete's sakes, this is the most easily gamed, absolutely stupid election system you could possibly imagine. This system can be gamed in a million different ways. Random people can just declare themselves Democrat candidates or Republican candidates, muddy up the field on one side, and where people vote as if it's a primary Republican split between 2 candidates. Some Republicans like one candidate or Republicans like another. The Democrat, if it's a sole Democrat, wins by virtue. Invert the other way, run a bunch of random Democrats on the ballot, and muddy the waters, muddy the field. Democrat votes splits, Republican wins by virtue. How does this make any sense? How is this more democratic than a basic primary system? Where people vote for a Republican candidate in a Republican field, a Democrat candidates in a Democrat field, and then those 2 contenders face off in a legitimate democratic process, one candidate versus the other 2 representing 2 different political sides and political stances, and the one with the majority wins. This is the perfect example of something that sounds really smart in theory, but in practice is a complete disaster. And if I'm not mistaken, Lisa Murkowski from the state of Alaska has been one of the main supporters behind the system of ranked choice voting in the state of Alaska, the push towards it. This is like some of that pseudo-intellectual genius idea that somebody had when they were way too high on some sort of spirit guide trip in the mountains of Alaska. Oh, dude, I have a genius idea to reform democracy and reform all of this divisive partisan stuff going on in our country. Dude, it's called ranked choice voting. Except, of course, it's not a genius idea. It's absolutely stupid. And it makes no sense. You know how I know it makes no sense? Because if ranked choice voting was used in the Wyoming election with Liz Cheney could have possibly won after pulling her con to get Democrats to register as Republicans and vote for her, and ranked choice system all Liz Cheney would have needed to pass that finish line, and be declared the winner in such undemocratic fashion as muddy up the waters, just use all of her deep state money to launch a bunch of random campaigns, and Republican opponents market those people as Trumpian Republicans, split the Trump vote, and then by virtue Liz Cheney wins. Does that sound like the democratic process representing the will of the voters? I mean, in this election alone, if you take a look at the numbers, more than 60% of Alaskans voted for the Republican Party. They voted for a candidate with an R next to their name, and they caught a Democrat as the end result. And of course, some people will tell you, of course, it's democratic. They democratically voted for ranked choice voting. Yeah, but who was actually paying attention to the ranked choice system? Who knew the exact details and knew exactly how it was going to work, and how many people were unaware of what it actually meant? How many people voted in the special election in Alaska as if it was some sort of primary process and they were just voting to elect their favorite Republican, not understanding the actual system? And it's not to insult her to mean people's basic level of intelligence. But not everyone is so tuned in and paying attention. A lot of people just show up to the ballot box and choose the Republican candidate. And at a place where you have so many more Republicans voting 60% Republican on the ballot and getting a Democrat, the end result just seems unbelievable, indefensible. It's a bad system. And of course, the headlines now: Democrats are running with this thing, like it's a huge victory. Phil Tola's victory is a major upset in a state that voted for Trump by 10 points in 2020. And it makes her the first Native Alaskan elected to Congress. Peltola will also be the first Democrat to represent the seat, and nearly half of a century they're making it seem as if it was a big, massive upset victory. And she overperformed the state that Donald Trump carried by 10 points when she didn't even get 40% of the vote. This is truly clown world stuff, folks. And if you ask me, Sarah Palin should be the rightful victor. There was a primary process. Sarah Palin would have beat her contender, and Sarah Palin would have won in a head-to-head matchup against the Democratic candidates. That would have been democratic. That would have been a legitimate election process. Although luckily enough, folks, it's only a small bump in the road, because Don Young's term ends on January 3rd, and there's going to be a timeframe here to rectify the situation. And I could pretty much guarantee you after this supposed upset victory, the Democratic candidate is not going to win in the election that follows in just a small period of time. But of course, like most things, we'll have to see how this whole thing plays out. Alright, thanks for being here, folks. Please receive a big hug from all of us.